Welcome to episode 12 of Politically Charged. I am, of course, as always, Jack Berlin. That does not change, but our topics do. Kind of. On this episode, we're talking everything from another healthcare bill dying in the Senate. Can't believe I messed that up already. Reince Priebus was ousted this week as chief of staff. Are there more shakeups coming? And Putin is just a tad bit mad at his little puppet, Donald J. Trump. We'll get to all that and more on this week's episode. Of course, I'd love for you to listen all the way through this episode because, well, it's amazing, but, you know, I'm a bit biased. But if you don't want to get a better understanding of the week in politics for whatever reason, no judgment, skip to the end where I talk about Trump's attempt to ban transgender individuals from the military. I went on a little bit of a rant, but I think it's important that everybody kind of understands the scope of what he's trying to do. So with that being said, make sure to stick around or at least skip to that. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Jack Berlin. Let me know what you think of the pod. And with that being said, let's go. All right, let's start with healthcare. But I feel like I need to preface this by saying I'm so incredibly tired of talking about the Republicans' attempts to, you know, just casually hurt millions and millions of Americans by taking away their health insurance. Assuming that you're like me or just you're listening to this, you have to be tired of listening, of seeing people talk about it. I'd suggest bumping the speed up for this section, just the healthcare section, to 1.5 or twice as fast to kind of get through it faster because it's a lot of good information, but it does get repetitive, and it's going to take just a little bit to get through everything that's happened this week. So with that being said, it's like the third time I've said that so far. This healthcare stuff the Republicans just won't let it die. This past week, the Senate voted down 3 versions of healthcare after finally getting enough votes to proceed to the floor. All 3 of which are just generally awful bills. At the bare minimum, they rip healthcare away from 16 million people. The least awful of the plans still rips healthcare away from 16 million people. Now, the first of these 3 bills, the old Senate healthcare bill that went up that they never got to a vote, of course, it was much less generous to people that really need healthcare. It had huge Medicaid cuts and a repeal of some of the taxes on the wealthy that really makes Obamacare possible. That plan would leave 22 million uninsured in 10 years. Then they proceeded to the repeal now, replace later that rolled back the Medicaid expansion that has happened under Obamacare while also eliminating subsidies for lower income people and repealing most taxes on the wealthy, playing into the whole theme of hurting the poor as much as possible and helping the wealthy as much as possible. That plan would have resulted in 30 plus million people uninsured in 10 years, 18 million uninsured in a year because of the instability it would have created in the insurance marketplace. Then, finally, the big dramatic moment of last week with John McCain being a key figure, the skinny repeal bill that Senate Republicans threw together at the last minute with no CBO score and little to no time for anybody to truthfully read it and really know what the consequences of the bill would really be on the American public. It would have undone the mandates put in place by Obamacare, which essentially would have blown up insurance exchanges because Republicans just didn't bother to replace it with anything. It would have increased premiums exponentially. It would have made it harder to get insurance. Insurers would have been pulling out of the marketplace. It would have been a complete catastrophe. Thankfully, it didn't happen. It was sold by Republican leadership as a bad bill because, you know, that always works. But they pitched it as vote yes on this to pass the buck over to the House so that the Senate didn't have to make the decision, didn't have to be the ones who get penalized for this if it ends up backfiring, which it would have. They just would have been able to pin it on the House. This bill would leave 16 million uninsured. So that's the 16 million number I referenced in the beginning. John McCain, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins were the 3 Republican defectors that tanked the skinny repeal, as the first 2 attempts both had less than 46 votes in favor. McCain played into his maverick persona, keeping his vote a secret until the last second, with, of all things, a dramatic thumbs down that caught the Senate completely off guard. There's clips of it, of that moment going around on Twitter. You can actually hear the gasps from people on the floor, from senators, from people in the gallery that's above the Senate chamber, shocked that McCain would do this. After all this, Republicans have accomplished almost nothing in 6 or 7 months of holding majorities in both chambers of Congress and, of course, having the White House. So you'd think they'd move on to an issue where, they might have a better chance of picking up a dub, right? Hell no. Instead, we have Trump threatening congressional members on Twitter to put some kind of healthcare bill up for a vote, or possibly risk having aspects of their healthcare taken away. So Trump, undeterred by the votes in the Senate, is now threatening members of Congress to get his way because, that'll work. White House Budget Director Nick Mulvaney has been saying in no uncertain terms that the position of the Trump administration is that no other bills should be considered by the Senate until health care is voted on again. This would mean ignoring huge issues and fast approaching problems like raising the debt ceiling. Now, if we don't take this problem of raising the debt ceiling head on, the U.S. could possibly default on our debt, which would be catastrophic. Nobody really knows what that would entail, so maybe we should avoid it. Republicans really only have 3 viable options for healthcare at this point. They could just lean on McCain and try to get him to come back home. But, that has a side effect of hurting millions and millions and millions of Americans, and I doubt John McCain wants to lose his seat in the Senate. They could try to combine aspects of each bill that could get enough Republicans on board to pass. This is probably their best bet, since they do have the majority in the Senate, but never count out somebody like Ted Cruz blowing everything up just to get his name in the paper, which I'm sure will happen. Or maybe, this is a crazy idea, but maybe, just maybe, ignore the crazy right-wingers, do their damn jobs, and throw Democrats a bone so that they can come up with some kind of bipartisan solution for some of the issues that are facing Obamacare. Democrats have proven to be willing to work on the bill or to work on Obamacare, but Republicans have just, so far, refused to engage, refused to have any bipartisanship in the process. Instead, they've chosen to be secretive, and that hasn't really worked so far. Only one Republican senator, Susan Collins, who did vote against the skinny repeal, has advocated for bipartisanship. So, long story short, Republicans are still hell-bent on ripping insurance away from millions and millions of Americans while refusing to work with Democrats to maybe actually fix Obamacare, or at least fix the parts that could be improved upon. Pretty much par for what the Republicans have been doing lately. After all this, Politico has a story out this weekend about how John McCain almost left the Republican Party about 15 years ago following his 2000 campaign for president, in which Republicans pretty much savaged him to get George W. Bush elected, and that worked out real well. Speculation is mounting, according to this article, that if there was ever a time for somebody like McCain, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, people that have at least some principles, to defect from the Republican Party, it'd be now, when Republican leadership has seemingly lost their damn minds. Transition. Reince, finally out of his position as Chief of Staff, something that's been really publicly considered pretty much from day one. On Thursday, Trump reportedly accepted Reince's resignation as Chief of Staff and immediately left him on the tarmac, Lane Kiffin style. Now, for those of you that aren't sports fans or just don't remember, Lane Kiffin was fired from USC after the team plane landed at LAX. He was fired on the runway and just left there. So, of course, Trump, the gentleman that he is, did the same exact thing to Reince. On Friday, Trump named former general and more recently Secretary of Homeland Security John Kelly as his new Chief of Staff. Very important to note, fun fact, last time a former general served as Chief of Staff, when Richard Nixon was under fire. So, obviously that worked out well. Only question now is how long it'll take Trump to undercut his new Chief of Staff. There's so many power centers, for lack of a better word, lack of a better term, in the West Wing right now. There's Kushner, there's Bannon, there's McMaster, who seems to be the most level-headed. There's Scaramucci, who is a complete gamble. And now there's Kelly. Now there's John Kelly, a former general. So he's not really going to put up with the crap that the rest of these guys have been spewing and really putting up with. It's not exactly a work environment you'd really expect to induce success. But Kelly and Trump see eye to eye on immigration. So far, under the banner of Homeland Security, Kelly has run ICE, which I think I mentioned last week or the week before, is deporting people at near record levels only 6 months into the administration. The biggest question out of all of this: are more West Wing and cabinet shakeups looming in the Trump administration? In the past 2 weeks, Trump has lost his press secretary and communication director in Sean Spicer, who resigned or was fired or something, and now his chief of staff in Reince. Is Sessions next? The off-embattled Jeff Sessions, AG for the Trump administration, has been repeatedly and continuously under attack by Trump, Trump can ask Sessions for his resignation at any time, and Sessions pretty much just has to give it to him. But instead of doing that, Trump continues to just attack him via Twitter, via press conferences, really via any means available. But I gotta stop saying but Trump may have finally found a line in the sand that Republicans are willing to hold. And that line: firing Sessions. Though congressional Democrats do dislike Sessions and would love to see him gone, Republicans, on the other hand, do not want to see that happen. Senators are notoriously defensive of their own, even after they've left the Senate. Jeff Sessions was junior senator from Alabama before he was appointed Attorney General. People like Lindsey Graham have said that there will be holy hell, which I don't fully understand, but there will be holy hell to pay for firing Sessions. The chairman of the Judiciary Committee, I'm struggling to speak today, Chuck Grassley, has dropped hints that it might not be possible to confirm a new AG, leaving Trump, who, if he fired Sessions, would have Rod Rosenstein, who is the one that appointed a special counsel in the first place. Special counsel is still a word Trump struggles to spell. There's still a phrase. That special counsel is, of course, investigating the Russian meddling in our election, which leads us to the next point: Putin being just a tad bit mad at his tiny little puppet. As I said in the intro, Putin is so ticked off at Trump right now, especially because of the fact that Trump this week is expected to sign more sanctions into effect. Putin ordered over 700 U.S. embassy staff out of Russia and seized 2 diplomatic facilities in retaliation for this. Piling onto that, the deputy foreign minister for Russia said this morning that further retaliation can be expected if Trump goes ahead with signing the bill. So, Trump is placed in, I talked a little bit about it last week, Trump is placed in a difficult position right now. He can sign the sanctions, which will be incredibly popular here, but signing the sanctions is going to pretty much completely trash his idea of resetting relations with Russia. It's going to completely throw all of that into question. The bill itself that actually contains the sanctions on Russia actually contains sanctions on Russia, Iran, and North Korea, while permanently setting into law the sanctions that Obama placed on Russia this past December. Those sanctions seized 2 diplomatic facilities from the Russians, something they reciprocated in their latest sanctions. Those sanctions have really hurt the Russian economy, and Putin has been desperate to have them removed, hence maybe why he supported Trump so much. The retaliation seems to be partly based on Russia giving up on Trump giving them preferential treatment. They really don't expect it anymore, at least that's what it looks like, which, is completely understandable. I mean, you go out of your way to meddle in the most powerful nation on Earth's election process, and the person who benefits from all this isn't even willing to, completely screw over the oath he took to his country and help you. A leader in a country that despises us. I completely get it. It makes sense. I see why Putin is so mad about it. I would expect Trump to do whatever the hell I wanted to. I guess we'll see how all of this shakes out over the course of the week. Of course, Putin has threatened more sanctions. Maybe Putin will retaliate by dropping more info on contacts with the Trump campaign. That's entirely conspiracy theory. I don't want to turn into Alex Jones, at least not yet. I don't need to emulate him to get this pod to blow up. Word to Philip Yon. Now, with all that being said, let's move on to this final segment. I'm trying to make this episode quick today. I want the Sunday episode. Well, I guess they drop Monday. The Monday episodes to be more of a weekly roundup, and then Thursdays will be more conversations, more in depth. With that being said, let's move on to quick hitters. Only 2 today because one of these issues has got me ticked. First up, though, North Korea launched yet another missile, the second this month. The last one they launched on July 4th as a birthday present for America. In response, we, along with some allies, we as in the U.S., along with some allies, did another flyover with the classic B-1 bombers. We also successfully tested THAAD, the missile defense system that would be used to intercept an incoming attack from North Korea. It's the same system we've deployed to South Korea. I said it a couple episodes back. I really hope we're doing something other than just flyovers as a response. I mean, testing THAAD was something we didn't see last time, and that did happen this time, and that's good, especially since the test was successful, or at least they told us it was successful. But I need something more. At least that's the way I feel. I feel like we need a stronger show of force than just flying some bombers over a country that isn't going to shoot them down. I'm obviously not involved in the Trump administration in any way, shape, or form, even though I might be qualified to do so based on other people working in there. So I don't know if there's been some covert ops, some covert operations that have gone on to kind of do a stronger display of force. So hopefully something like that's going on, or at least we're preparing something. But this situation seems like it's going to escalate from here. I'm seeing a bunch of stuff from British newspapers, so I don't really know how trustworthy that is, that Trump and military advisors are considering possible options for a missile strike on North Korea's nuclear facilities. So, unfortunately, I'm sure more from this will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully, everything stays sane. We don't get into a nuclear war with North Korea, of all people. The other thing I wanted to touch on is Trump's attempt at banning transgender individuals from the military. I talked a little bit about it on Thursday's episode with Emily, which everybody should go check out. It was actually a really good conversation. But I wanted to put it more eloquently when I've had a little bit more time to prepare for it, because it kind of came out as soon as we started the pod. The idea that someone's sexual preference, religious preference, or gender identification should determine whether or not they can serve their country is ludicrous. If they want to serve their country, they should be able to, period. There should be no question about that. First of all, that Trump and Republicans use this as a trading chip in order to get more funding for his border wall is absolutely absurd and despicable. Second, Trump's claim that transgender individuals are somehow imposing an undue burden on the military is a complete load of crap. The military spends almost 10 times as much money on medication like Viagra every year as they do on medical costs incurred by gender reassignment medical costs. There's definitely a better way to say that, but you get my point. God forbid we prevent old men from getting their freak on. Third, and maybe the part that ticks me off the most, Trump and his Republican cohorts thought this would be an issue that would divide Democrats and prove to be a major problem for them in the 2018 midterms, gubernatorial, Senate races. They were wrong. They were willing, scratch that. They were more than willing to discriminate against people who have done absolutely nothing wrong just to score some cheap political points. They obviously underestimated the backlash they'd get for this, and Republicans, for the most part, have come out against it, thankfully. Just like the ban on African Americans and Don't Ask, Don't Tell before it, this too will fail to stick. We've made too much progress in terms of equality in this country, with obviously, nobody's disputing, tons more work needs to be done for this country to really become equal. To revert back to old prejudices and phobias simply to score some cheap political points is maddening. This brazen attempt to discriminate speaks to the character of President Trump and some of the Republicans that represent us. The fact that Republicans were willing to back this up, that they asked for something like this, even if the reports that Trump went way farther than they wanted him to go are true, it's ridiculous. It's asinine. It's complete crap. If you want to serve your country and potentially lay down your life so that somebody like me, somebody like my family, can live here free, by all means, I could not give less of a crap who you are, what your sexual preference is, what God you celebrate, or your gender. None of that matters. What matters is that somebody's willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, potentially of their life, to keep the idea of America going. And that there's people out there that think this is a good idea, not only politically, but for the military. That people are so prejudiced against transgender individuals that they're willing to go through with this is ridiculous and extremely disappointing. So, on that uplifting note, thank you so much for checking out episode 12 of Politically Charged. This one was more of a weekly roundup, giving you the biggest news, or at least what I thought was the biggest news of the last week. Keep an eye out for the next episode, dropping this coming Thursday. And make sure to follow me on Twitter at Jack Berlin to let me know what you think. Finally, with all that being said, we out.